Hi everyone, welcome back to the Growing Chess channel. Today we are going to see something very interesting and instructive at the same time. We all know how important it is to spot tactics and practice tactical shots, tactical patterns on a daily basis. To be in touch with all the patterns and make sure that our mind is warmed up and we do not miss any tactical shot while playing a practical game. But these two scenarios are completely different. If we are solving tactics, we know that at this moment there is some tactical shot, and our mind naturally keeps going in that direction, keeps looking at forcing moves without missing any of them. However, when we are playing a game, we are mostly into the phase where we are looking at positional plans, we are trying to improve our pieces, we are not only looking at tactical shots. So it's quite easy to miss tactical shots during a practical game. So today I'll be explaining you a new concept which will help you understand that there is a very high probability of a tactical shot in the current position. This concept is called as the critical points concept. Now, how should we define a critical point? A critical point is a square where there are equal or more number of attackers as compared to the number of defenders. Remember this, if there are equal number of attackers and defenders, the point becomes quite sensitive and can be considered as a critical point. Now, I will explain you based on an example to understand better. Okay, let us look at this position. Here it's black to move. Now, how to identify the critical points? As I have already explained you, it should be something which has equal or more number of attackers as compared to the defenders. So for example, in this position, F1 is one critical point. There are two attackers. Okay, this rook is pinned, so you can also say it's only one attacker on F4 and there is one defender. So that becomes a critical point. G2 is one more. Queen is the attacker, king is the defender. E6. Remember, it's very easy to miss those points where there are zero attackers and zero defenders. So don't miss them. All hanging points in your opponent's camp are always critical. They are sensitive because there are no defenders to that point. So E6 is 1, G2 is 1, F1 is 1. Along with that, A2 can also be considered as another critical point as it's hanging as well. Now you can say, why not A3, B4, let's say A4 are considered as critical points? Okay, now let me explain you this in a bit depth. There are two types of critical points. One is the squares which are occupied by pieces, for example, the E6, D3, these squares. And the second type is the squares which are unoccupied, the empty squares. For example, a square like A3 or F1. Now this technique is devised to shorten your thought process, to ease in your thought process, and to find the tactical shots without missing them and without wasting a lot of time on your clock. So if you keep looking at absolutely all these critical points which have zero attackers or more attackers as compared to the number of defenders, then you will waste a lot of time on the clock. So instead of doing that, I will explain you how to pick only the relevant critical points which are going to help you. So occupied squares which consist of pieces or pawns, everything, all the critical points should be considered. Do not miss any of them. They are all relevant because there is some material standing on them that increases their value. So you have to consider all the critical points which have pieces or pawns standing on those squares. Okay, now let's go to the second type, which is the unoccupied squares. Now, how to pick unoccupied squares which are critical points? For example, A3, zero attackers, zero defenders can be considered as a critical point. But is it relevant? I don't think so, because from A3, you are not going to gain any advantage, or it's completely out of the counterplay which is going on in the game. So I'll give you a very simple technique which will help you to find the unoccupied squares critical points. Pick those unoccupied squares or empty squares which are critical, from where you can directly attack this king. Directly, remember this, with the pieces that you have. For example, if you had a knight, f2 could also become a critical point, because from there you can directly attack the king. f1 is one more critical point. It's an empty square, but at the same time you can directly attack this king. If there are multiple critical points in any given position, or while you're playing a game you see that, oh, I see a lot of critical points in my opponent's camp, then it's a very big hint there is high probability that there is some tactical shot coming up. You can raise your concentration levels towards the tactics, and you can start looking at forcing moves which could exploit these critical points. Okay, so for example, here the f1 square is the most critical, from where you can deliver a checkmate. There are two defenders. One is this rook, which is directly defending it, and second is the queen, which is pinning this rook and indirectly defending f1, because rook on f7 is also an attacker to the f1 square. So now what you should try to do is look at all the candidate moves which would deflect these defenders. Deflect, or you can say just eliminate these defenders, or you can say just force them to move away from the square from where they are protecting the critical point. So look at all the candidate moves like d5, trying to attack the queen, queen e4, queen d7, queen e8, queen c8, rook e4, rook f6. Now out of these, some are just silly moves which you can easily reject, like queen d5 is just a blunder. Queen c8 and queen e8 both are blunders, because after you take, it's going to be a check. Now you're left with all these candidates now, rook e4 or rook f6. If rook e4, then I don't really like this move, because the rook steps away from this attacking spot. Now there is d5, queen d7, queen e4 and rook f6. Now if you spend some time calculating on these four candidates, you can make sure that in all the candidates except queen e4, this queen can go back to e2 or e1 and defend this critical point. So with that said, queen e4 should be the strongest move, because it attacks this queen and at the same time forces the queen to move away of the spin. If he decides to take the queen, then there is rook f1 check, rook into f1, rook into f1, it's a checkmate. And after queen e4, if he decides to go queen c8 check, we can simply play rook f8, attacking the queen while we are also attacking the f1 square. And the pin is gone. This queen cannot maintain the pin, because then the rook will simply capture it. So the queen has to move somewhere. Wherever it goes, there would be rook f1. So it's not important here to solve this position. What I'm trying to explain you is the thought process. So try to understand this thought process, and if you are interested to know more about this critical points thought process and its implementation, comment below, and what I will do is I will solve a few positions which could be dynamic, which will help you to understand better how to implement the concept of this critical points in your practical games. If you have found this video instructive, guys, definitely think about liking it, and do not forget to subscribe our channel. Also click the bell icon so that you can get notified as soon as we come up with another instructive video for you. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching. See you soon.